There was a nice recording message. There it is. So wonderful. Okay, let me just share my screen for a little bit. Should only take like 2-3 minutes. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, first of all, apologies. Thank you, Lucas, by the way. First time here today. Okay, so yeah, Lucas let me know that meetup.com had the Jitsi link broken. So thank you for that. And thank you for finding your way here. So yeah, welcome to Cardano Builders. This is our second check-in, 001. And I'm really glad you made it here. So we are a group where current and future builders on and off Cardano check in on each other, inform one another what we are building, celebrate each other's wins, help each other by being accountability buddies, and provide support and hopefully actionable advice. To accomplish these goals, we have the check-in format, right? So usually, if there are more people, I would say at some point, in groups of 3 to 4 projects, we share concisely in breakout rooms what it is, what we're building, and also answer a few prompts. So everyone answers what they have accomplished recently, what's next, and what kind of help they desire. So you see that on my name, right, I have my project name, mediators.ai here. So if you have multiple team members coming, right, it's a good indication if you all work on the same project to have that. So that way in the future, we can break each other up more neatly into breakout rooms, right? And then you can come back. But yeah, so one project representative or individual answers these kind of questions first, right? So accomplishments, what's next, and what help is needed. And the listening folks should take notes for clarifying questions, suggestions, etc. Right? So really try to hear what is being said and then respond to that after these prompts have been answered. Right? So you can ask your questions there and also offer some input. So depending on the group size, the focus discussion, including answering the prompts and also the 30-second pitch, should last between 7 to 10 minutes per project, right? As we know, we're all very busy. There's an impromptu PPBL session in now 45 minutes. So let's try to move through this quickly, but in depth enough. And if you do this regularly, we'll be getting better at this. So also please be mindful of the info provided, right? So these group discussions should not be recorded. Also treat the information as confidential. So for example, there's an opportunity if we come back after the breakout sessions, for example, to a joint session or even in some other place, right? Ask for permission if you think that sharing some information of what you've heard would be beneficial to somebody else. And of course, that cannot be information that would harm the other person or the project sharing the information if that information gets out, right? So don't even ask for that permission there. That's kind of like probably a no. But yeah. So to give you an example, right? So on check-in 0, I presented Mediators AI. So this is my updated check-in, just very brief for as an example. So this is a real example, and this is kind of how I would go about it with the main points that I have prepared for this check-in. So here's my pitch in 30 seconds or less for mediators.ai, which probably still needs improvement, but that's why I'm looking for you for feedback. Right? So here we go. In the United States, mediations have an average turnaround time of half a year. Mediators.ai, the first dispute resolution platform on Cardano, helps settling disputes within 1 week. In the previous check-in, I stated that next would be the launch on mainnet, and indeed, the big accomplishment for this check-in is exactly that. Right? We had a Gimbal Labs Playground session where we announced it, and now the password protection is also no more. So that means mediators.ai is open for business. So that's our big one. So what's next? I'm looking to onboard 5 more mediators this week. Actually, I've done 2 today, this morning, and work towards people using the platform to solving their disputes. So what we need help with, obviously, is now raising awareness and getting disputing parties to use the platform. So that would be my ask to you. And this is essentially the format. I'll be stopping the screen share now and hope that nothing crashes. Okay, so the question was, what's taking so long? So um, that's a good question. And I also often, it was mind-boggling to me. Um, there are, what was the other competitor? There's essentially services that try to facilitate or like hand select the mediators that they would assign a case to. And that's all good and stuff. But if there's like, okay, I forgot the exact ratio. Either it was 4-1 or 2-1. Right? So meaning 800 mediators are either supported by 400 case managers or 200. I don't remember. But that was one of the competitors that we looked at. It's in our white paper somewhere. And that is something that I think is like, okay, well, these case managers, this is all administrative stuff. Why in the hell would you do that? So the reality is that mediators at large have not arrived in uh, the computer age even. And so there's inefficiencies that we tackle. It's really paperwork. And by paperwork, I mean paper, like the physical medium of paper that is being used. And mind you, the 6 months is on average in the US is actually after parties have already known about mediation. They have decided that they want to mediate and they hand selected a mediator, right? I remember in in law school, one of my professors for mediation, he had to cancel a session because he scheduled a mediation 6 months prior. And to me, that's just an insane amount of time for any type of dispute, whether that be a neighbor dispute, whether that be anything about family law, right? Think divorce, child custody, domestic violence, international disputes that often get mediated. So the inefficiencies are really in a process. What's taking so long? And for that, we actually don't need blockchain, right, to solve that, because it's a simple graph problem, really, to connect the pieces. And I've worked in recommendation engines since 2015. So yeah, that's probably the big part. Damn, we're still recording. Uh, um, I think at least in the first step, it's not a full. The goal is not a full on replacement, right? So there's certain aspects that the traditional system actually doesn't support right now, right? It is not accessible. So we have a lot of underserved populations that don't get any access to justice, right? That is in part also a awareness problem, right? That people actually do not know about mediation. Like half of my team at Locks did not know about mediation before talking to me. That's an issue. And but so there are cases, for example, in Brazil, we are looking to primarily go into family disputes that are not necessarily traditionally associated with the courts, right? So it's just siblings not talking to each other, right? Um, but in California, for example, we also have court mandated mediation, which unfortunately does often not really resemble mediation because it's just shuttle diplomacy. But for example, if you file for divorce in California, the judge will send you first to mediation. My wife, she's a social worker. When she works with her clients, they also often get sent to mediation first and foremost. So there's a pipeline in a sense, right? And the goal is also to integrate with those. We probably need to make better use of some of our advisors, for example, Ambassador Steve Rhodes, former ambassador of the US to Zimbabwe. He has all kinds of government connections, including in California, across the US, and also international. And that is also something that's kind of, in terms of adoption, it's a little bit, it's interesting because I think we want to give people choices, right? But it is also a lot easier to make the right choice if you're forced to do so. So to answer your question, especially when it comes to court-mandated mediation, which unfortunately often do not resemble real mediations, this is certainly an area that we want to say, okay, we want to get in there. And so if you file for divorce in California, chances are you get to mediation fast because there's an integration to Mediators AI. Ultimately, I think there are cases that cannot be mediated because mediation requires a cooperation of the parties. And you sign up when you sign up for mediation, right? You essentially acknowledge that you start mediation in good faith. You are attempting to solve the disputes, and you do not use that as a way to kind of gather information from the other party and use that later in litigation. Right? There's rules and statutes and all that, at least in California. So while I think a lot more cases can be mediated and should be mediated, because the parties get what they want and they decide on it and see a dispute more or finding a more amicable solution. There are cases, of course, a lot of criminal cases that cannot necessarily be mediated or should not be mediated. So it is, I guess, an addition, bringing more access to justice, and then also taking some part of the litigation process and bring that into mediation as well. So that's how I see it. So it's not a full-on replacement, but I see it as a shift. And unfortunately, the traditional mediation industry has big issues besides the speed. That's actually not our primary. When we did the win-win dispute resolution proposal in Fund 6, that was actually not our first point. But that is now what we are leading with from a value proposition. I answered it really quickly. So we have the mediation training and certification proposal and the legal and financial implementations challenge. I just had an IdeaFest presentation, so it's just a brief 3-minute video or something like that. So the plan is hopefully it gets funded, and then I share the form with you. So if people who are interested can fill out the form. So they are on the list, and then if it gets funded, or rather when it gets funded, we just have to be creative to find funding mechanisms. If Catalyst is not the appropriate venue, the mediation training will happen in October. And it's a 40-hour mediation training, and then, of course, access to our internal Discord where we all support our already existing mediators. And then there's ongoing support for at least a year with regular check-ins and further training opportunities, etc. So